Hello?
Hi,
Hi. Great.
we can hear and see you.
Thank you. Great.
Good afternoon, friends. I'm looking at our attendance. Looks like we're still waiting for a few council members to join us. We will get started in just a minute or two. Welcome, Mr. Connor. It's nice to have you here today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You in the mood to say the Pledge of Allegiance for us?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we're going to start the meeting. We'll call it to order and then we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and we'll all shut off our microphones and you're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Absolutely. I have no objection to that whatsoever.
Mark, I will say thank you after you do it. If just like, I'm just not sure yet if, you know, the performance will be up to snuff. So I'm,
Well,
and then,
I'll try really hard.
okay. And then Sherry, if you don't mind, we'll just take just a quick second before we roll into our business and just pause about today's shootings and acknowledge what's going on in the world outside of our chambers, our virtual chambers. So,
Absolutely.
all right.
There are actually more shootings today.
Yes, in Georgia.
Oh, man.
All right. All right, there we go. All right, well, we do have a quorum, so I will, in just a moment, I will call the meeting to order. And just so folks know, Mark Connor is our guest today, and he has agreed to do the Pledge of Allegiance for us. So we will do that after we call the meeting to order. Sherry, are you ready with recording?
Yes, it should be. There we go.
Firing on all cylinders. All right, the St. Paul City Council will come to order. Roll call.
Prince,
Here.
Tao,
Here.
Tolbert,
Here.
Yang, Jalali.
Here.
Naker.
Here.
Council President Brenmon.
Here.
And Councilmember Yang, are you with us now? You're on mute. Okay, well, for now it's 6 present, 1 absent, but Councilmember Yang looks like she'll be joining us shortly.
Thank you. Please, oh, she's off mute. Looks like 7 are present.
I'm here.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you. All right, folks, we have a guest with us today, Mark Connor, who will be leading the pledge. So if you could stand and we will let Mark lead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before we move into our meeting, I just wanted to pause for a moment in the midst of the circulating of news, a developing story about another white male shooter, this time rampaging in Georgia, killing 8 people. And as the story unfolds, it is very sad. It's sickening. I know that many council members are very impacted by this, especially in light of the gun violence prevention conversation we had this morning. And I want to take a moment to recognize the victims of the violence, including the family and friends and loved ones who will be impacted by this for years to come. And just comment that this, while it sickens and saddens us and wears us down, it does strengthen our resolve as a council to end racial and gender, or for racial and gender justice and ending gun violence. So if we could have just a moment or two of silence in honor of the victims, families, and loved ones. Thank you.
Consent agenda items 1 through 22 are before you for your consideration.
We are pulling item 21 for separate consideration. Is anything else that should be taken separately today? All right, seeing none, Mr. Tao moves consent agenda. Roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye, sorry. Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Council President Brenman.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The consent agenda is adopted as amended. Item 21, Resolution 21-425, declaring May 5th to be Irish Unity Day in the city of St. Paul.
Councilmember Prince.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Mark Connor, who is with us here today from St. Paul's Ancient Order of the Hibernians. I am going to start with reading a few paragraphs from the resolution and then invite Mark to say a few words. And thank you, Mark, for joining us in the pledge today. Today is a relatively quiet, again, St. Patrick's Day in St. Paul, but it's very special to me that my colleagues joined me in putting forward this resolution today. Whereas the City of St. Paul cherishes the historical experience of her communities, and whereas the Irish Catholic community was instrumental in the formation and growth of the city, and whereas Catholic Archbishop John Ireland and Scots Irish Protestant James J. Hill, founder of the Great Northern Railroad, collaborated to fund final construction of the Cathedral of St. Paul on the city's highest hill, modeling unity as leaders from communities that were military enemies in Ireland. And whereas under the Good Friday Agreement Peace Accord of 1998, historical inquiries continue, seeking truth and justice for a peaceful Ireland. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on this St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2021, at the request of the Archbishop John Ireland Division for Ramsey County Ancient Order of Hibernians in America, in conjunction with collaborating Irish American organizations, the City of St. Paul, in recognition of the sacrifices and struggles of the Irish people to achieve peace, hereby declares May 5th, 2021, to be Irish Unity Day in St. Paul, Minnesota. Thank you, Mark, for being here, and I invite you to say a few words about this important opportunity that we are joining you with today.
Thank you very much. So I represent the Ancient Order of Hibernians, and we are an organization that's Irish, Catholic, and American. And our motto is friendship, unity, and Christian charity. So we want to be unified, and that means not just us being unified in our religion, but unified with the people who are fellow citizens, and to have charity to all of our fellow citizens. So that's the spirit in which we put forth this resolution. I really appreciate the fact that you're making it a Unity Day on May 5th, because it's to begin an anniversary of a time that was really hard for the Irish during their struggle and their conflict in the North in 1981. And I really appreciate the fact that we have the point about the historical inquiries that continue, because that's something, it's particularly a group called Relatives for Justice, who are relatives who have had their relatives of people who were murdered during the conflict, are seeking justice and seeking truth and reconciliation, sort of like the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission. You know, it's holding people accountable, and it's also bringing unity. And hopefully, we as an organization want to see a united Ireland, but we don't want to see war, and we don't want to see conflict among communities. And the last thing is that point in there about Archbishop John Ireland and James J. Hill. It's exemplary of how we as Americans with different backgrounds learn to live together and make a great country. So I really appreciate that. And you're a diverse group yourselves, representing the changing makeup of our city. And that's something that I really appreciate. So thank you, and God bless all of you.
Thank you, Mark. And with Mark's excellent statement, I would like to move approval of the resolution.
There's been a motion for approval by Councilmember Prince. Any discussion on that motion? I will say that Mr. Tolbert was wondering if Mr. Connor was actually in Ireland due to the dark room, but then we saw the curtain.
No,
the window.
I'm not, but I was in Ireland at the time of the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. I was there at that time, and it was really the whole thing informed a lot of my experience in life. So anyway, that's about all I can say.
Well, that would have been very authentic if you were actually in Ireland doing this too. Ms. Prince.
And I'd just like to also add for our council staff, they likely recall when Mark Connor's dad, Bob Connor, was among our staff as a legislative aide in Ward 7. And Mark's family lost Bob this year. St. Paul lost Bob this year, an amazing member of our St. Paul community, active in a million things. And so I also want to acknowledge that while we have Mark here.
Mr. Tolbert.
I just thought I'd take this opportunity. First of all, thank you for joining us, Mr. Connor. But it's obviously a different St. Patrick's Day than normal years. Last year was, I suppose, also as many things were canceled. But I think it's always a good reminder that St. Patrick's Day in many ways celebrates Ireland and Irish Americans and the contributions that they have. But I always like to remind people, and I'm one of those Irish people whose great-grandparents came over from Ireland to seek a better life for themselves and their families and future generations. And I always like to remind people, when you're out there celebrating St. Patrick's Day, remember that the Irish, when they came over, were discriminated against both for being Irish as well as for their religion. And they just were seeking a better life for themselves and their kids and their grandkids. And like that, today, there are many immigrants and refugees who are seeking to come to America for a better life for themselves, for their kids, even though they probably love their homeland and wish they could stay, whether it's hunger, war, or other reasons. But if you're out celebrating St. Patrick's Day and the contributions of Irish immigrants, don't forget that there are immigrants and refugees today who are being discriminated against for their religion, for where they come from, for how they look, and things like that. And I say, and we've reaffirmed this many times as a council, we are a city that has greatly been benefited by all the immigrants and refugees, amongst others, and all the contributions that have been made. So just always trying to remind people that you can't celebrate St. Patrick's Day without also celebrating today's immigrants and refugees who are trying to find a better life in America. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item 23, Resolution Public Hearing 21-18, ratifying the assessment for replacement of sanitary sewer services within the right-of-way as part of the Wheelock Parkway paving and lighting project.
This is a public hearing we've held online and transcribed over the phone. As such, Ms. Jalali would move to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion? Roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 24, Resolution Public Hearing 21-42, ratifying the assessments for repair of sanitary sewer line on private properties during October to December 2020.
And this public hearings was held online and over transcription of the phone. Therefore, Ms. Yang would move to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Roll call.
Prince? You're on
Aye.
mute. Thank you. Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 25, Resolution Public Hearing 21-14, ratifying the assessment for a water main and connection at 1628 Point Douglas Road South.
And this public hearing was held online. There's comments that were submitted on Legistar. As such, Ms. Prince would move to close the public hearing and approve. No, Ms. Prince.
Yeah. Thank you, Council President Brenmont. I had some questions about this, and I would like to lay it over for 1 week if that's possible.
All right. Shall we close the public hearing and lay over for 1 week then?
That's fine.
All right. So Ms. Prince moves to close the public hearing and lay the matter over for 1 week. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is laid over to March 24th. Item 26, Resolution Public Hearing 21-41, ratifying the assessments for replacement of lead water service line on private properties during October to December 2020.
And this is a public hearing was held online and transcribed over the phone. As such, Mr. Tolbert moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 27, Resolution Public Hearing 21-43, accepting federal recreational trail grant program funds through the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, entering into a grant agreement detailing conditions of the grant, which includes an indemnification clause, and amending the finance and spending plans of the Department of Parks and Recreation in the amount of $150,000 to reflect said grant funds for the Robert Pyram Regional Trail Project.
And the award for the longest title of an item on our agenda goes to this one today. On this one, I'm looking at you, Ms. Naker. Did you need a staff report?
I don't need a staff report, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I just want to say I love the Pyram Trail. It is gorgeous. I think there's going to be an official opening this summer, later this spring or summer, but it's wonderful. And my 7-year-old Whitman, who has become, I think, the biggest, most vocal champion for off-street bike trails, just can't get enough of both that one and the Capital City Bikeway. He keeps telling me we need to do one of those every single year. He just loves, I think, the ability to basically drive a car in his own lane. So it's gorgeous, and it takes you through some of the most beautiful terrain and some of the most lengthy off-street trails to many cities. So I just wanted to recognize what an amazing amenity it is, even if this is not necessarily the agenda item that best encapsulates it.
It's worth calling out, and also that we didn't get to do a grand opening in the fall, but I support this motion as well. And just have to say that the connection through across Plato and into the area by Holman's Field is really cool. We tested it out before it was really done, and it was a little adventurous. So I'm excited for the opening, and I feel like these when these trails connect to other trails and really create that infrastructure is when that recreational biking and it just really takes off. And I love that your 7-year-old loves it. We got our kids hooked on biking young too on these recreational trails, so I support it. as well. Any other discussion on this item? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Naker is moving to close the public hearing and approve. Roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Council President Brennan.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 28, Resolution Public Hearing 21-44, amending the financing and spending plan of the Department of Parks and Recreation in the amount of $73,150 to reflect funds received from the Lower Failing Creek project for staff design services for the Wakantipi project.
And Ms. Prince, were you looking for a staff report on this item?
That would be great.
All right. I believe Ms. Prosser is looking at our list.
She's further down. I can move her up. She was. She was on the meeting and now I'm not seeing her.
Yeah, I know. I see that too. I pressed the request to join. It almost looks like a technical thing. Should we push this one on hold for a moment and move on?
You know, I think we can probably pass it without it. I think this is about our providing, about the project providing staffing support out of the money they've raised to St. Paul Parks and Rec. And I understand it. I just thought it was a nice opportunity to say what a fabulous project this is and how close we are to having it ready to build. We're about $1 million away, or $2 million away. So I will move approval.
All right. So Ms. Prince is going to move to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? And I guess my only discussion would be that I think that these, just like the Pyram Trail, these important projects, as we've hit the milestones along the way, are very worth pulling off taking a moment just to acknowledge the work that's taken us to get here and the progress that's being made. So I am also in support. And with no other discussion, roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Council President Brennan.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 29, Resolution Public Hearing 21-45, amending the financing and spending plan of the Department of Parks and Recreation in the amount of $56,450 for funds received from the St. Paul Parks Conservancy for the Swede Hollow signage project.
I'm looking at you, Ms. Prince. Did you want to report on this one or just move to
No.
close the public hearing and approve?
We can close the public hearing and approve, but I will quickly say how much it means to the Friends of Swede Hollow that this signage project is being funded in this way. So it's a great step forward for the Hollow. So I will move approval, close the public hearing and move approval.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali. Naker.
Aye.
Council President Brennan.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 30, Resolution Public Hearing 21-50, amending the financing spending plan of the Department of Parks and Recreation in the amount of $8,482.59 for funds received from the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation for the upkeep and environmental maintenance of Swede Hollow Park.
More good news for the Hollow. I will move to close the public hearing and approve.
Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Council President Brenman.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 31, Resolution Public Hearing 21-57, amending the budget in the Office of Financial Empowerment to reflect an additional $8,000 due to amended contract with Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund, Inc. for consumer financial protection planning activities.
All right. This has been a public hearing online and transcribed over the phone. As such, I would move to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none, roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Council President Brenman.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 32, APC 21-1, considering the appeal of Aladdis Development LLC to a decision of the Planning Commission to deny a site plan for Lexington Station Apartments at 411-417 Lexington Parkway North.
All right, and I believe on this item, we have requested a staff report. I'm looking at you, Mr. Tao.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask staff to do a staff report and then followed by Director Goodman to give us a context of the situations and the challenge that we're dealing with is related to this this item.
All right, thank you. So we have Ms. Scarda, not that Ms. Scarda, the other Ms. Scarda on the phone here from DSI to chat with us about the item that is before us, and then Director Goodman following behind that report.
Yeah. And Council President Brenmo, and this is Tia Anderson. I just want to indicate that I will be sharing my screen for the presentation portion while Ms. Scarda does the talking.
Okay, you should be able to present. Let us know if you can't. You are listed as a presenter. Looks good.
Looks good. Thank you, Tia. Good afternoon, Council President Brenmoen and council members. My name is Ashley Scarda, and I'm a zoning inspector at DSI. I have been processing the site plan review file before you today. Next slide, please, Tia. Site plan review is a delegated function of the Planning Commission. Typically, it is decided by staff and some city staff, as well as a few experts from representative jurisdictions. All good examples listed here. With about 80 files that we see each year, the Planning Commission may end up seeing 1 or 2 of those for some reason, and this is one of those. We've got key timeline on the right, especially that the Planning Commission voted to review this site plan on December 4th. They voted to review it before we received the application. And that's not the norm, but there's a lot of community interest that I believe they're responding to. Our staff and reviewers looked at the plans. They noted required revisions and recommended approval with conditions to the zoning committee. After the Planning Commission vote to approve the site plan failed, the Planning Commission denied the site plan on February 5th, and Aladdis has appealed that denial. Next slide, please, Tia. For those that aren't familiar with the site, real quick, to the left, we have a use map of the surrounding properties. To the south, we see single family highlighted in yellow, multifamily in orange, commercial uses in that pinkish color, and the Wilder site in blue. On the right hand of the screen, we see a scale rendering showing the proposed building as it would look on site with the surrounding buildings. Next slide, Tia. Here's 2 additional renderings of the proposal from the perspective of someone who would be standing on Lexington Parkway North looking south. It's the corner with the commercial tenant. And here we've got a rendering of the site plan itself. A quick overview highlights this is a T4 zone. There are 228 residential units proposed, 3,000 square feet of ground level commercial space, as we saw from the perspective in the last slide. They're proposing 254 structured parking spaces, floor area ratio 2.72. And there's a 12-foot sidewalk, but you'll see that there is some landscaping, whole 15 plus feet to the right of it. So they can allow for future ped bike facilities if and when those come into play. Next slide, Tia. So we received quite a bit of testimony for both hearings, and when you combine them, 9 letters and 1 speaker in support of the project, and 21 letters and 10 speakers against. And just a side note on that data, I had at least one organization write in both times with different letters, so I counted that as 2, and I just wanted to call that out just because I don't know if there was a norm there. Anyway, all of these letters that were received for this file have been forwarded to you, so should have those. Next slide, please, Tia. So in our zoning code, there are 11 findings for approving a site plan. Those findings are listed here. You'll see bolded at the top, number 1 and number 2 were the 2 findings that were denied or found to be not met when the Planning Commission denied the site plan. They concurred with staff on the remaining findings that they were met, and you'll see in the following 2 slides kind of the basis for the appeal and a little more on these. And specifically, it's the city's adopted comp plan, as well as some ordinances in the T District Code. Okie doke. So the Planning Commission's first reason for denial, shown in the text on the left, is, well, the site plan is generally consistent with applicable policies of the comp plan, the Lexington Station Area Plan, the Union Park Community Plan, and on balance, the site plan is inconsistent with the 2040 St. Paul Comp Plan's core values of equity, affordability, and sustainability. In response to the lack of compliance with the comp plan, the appellant noted that affordable housing is going to be provided as part of this project. And they noted various sustainable development strategies that were shown in the plan sheets themselves. The appellant proposes 3 additional conditions to demonstrate further compliance with these core values of the comp plan, which we'll make sure to call out on the last slide, so we'll get to those later. Next, the Planning Commission finding that the site plan did not comply with the traditional neighborhood district standards, specifically with respect to transitions to lower density and the extension of the street grid of Fuller Avenue west of Lexington. And the appellant noted the impracticality of transitioning gradually with the surrounding land uses. Kind of what that means is, how do you transition gradually when there's a T4 dense site next to R4 single family, and that the potential continuation of the street grid beyond the site is something that's out of the developer's control. And just a side note, the original staff report did find that the site plan was in compliance with the traditional neighborhood standards. And so next steps. The appellant has made asks of a few additional conditions to be added to what's being considered today. First, we have listed our original conditions, and just to make sure everyone's clear, I had mentioned that the normal site plan review committee had reviewed the plans and given feedback, and not all the, not a lot of times happened since then. We haven't received those revised plans because this is going on. So these first 5 conditions are related to making sure that the plans get revised and turned back into the city reviewers who had asked for, more things. And then the 3 additional conditions, specifically to be enrolled in an affordable housing incentive program, a commission to do a rooftop solar array to provide electricity for resident consumption, and also to commit to either a public art or public improvement project with locally commissioned artists and a historically significant theme to it. And I just want to have one kind of nerdy staff note, if you will, with the first one, the condition to enroll the development in the affordable housing program, just from the perspective of someone who processes city paperwork. It would be important that we said something more like that they submit a complete application to be reviewed. And that would be the different way to say that. And I believe PED housing staff would be better suited to answer questions about what would be on that application or what it would need. And I think that is all I had of why or how we got to here and what the appeal is stating.
All right, thank you. Before you take down the slides, I just want to see if my colleagues have any questions. Sometimes we ask you to go back and forth on the slides, so just making sure. Mr. Tao.
Thank you, Council President. I'm just curious here with the 5 condition. What is the timeline for that, and will those conditions come before the council for approval?
So typically the timeline depends on A, how busy my review team is, and then B, the possible turnaround from the developer. So it's an up in the air thing and hard to know. Usually it takes a couple months to go back and forth, and we'd put it on here as a condition so that y'all could check out, not see that end process, but know that the condition is there, so we have to for sure finish that process.
Okay, and the second part of that is, will these conditions come back to the council for approval? Because I do have some concern around the traffic as well.
Typically, they don't. For this one, what I'd be looking for would be that traffic staff, our traffic engineers would accept the final draft. And that's, I guess, when I read that, that's kind of what I'd expect would happen was, they'd just give us a thumbs up and say, yes, we finally accepted a draft.
Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Tao, if I could also, this is Tia Anderson, if I could also just add to Ashley's comment. Though we've listed these as in the original staff report as conditions of approval, it was really so that staff from various disciplines could ensure that all codes were being included within the plan set. None of the outstanding comments would materially impact the plan, if you would. So it's making sure that that there's overall compliance with codes and policies, but there was nothing that would change materially the look and feel of the plan. If the council wanted to see the plan again, certainly that's something that we could bring back.
Thank you, Tia, for that clarification. I think my concern here is that with the Lexington, when it was presented to me, was that there will be a left-hand turn on Lexington going northbound, and I just and I know that the traffic study will still happen, but just the way that it is right now, I see that it's a major mistake to allow a left-hand turn going northbound on Lexington. And I'm just going to give an example of how the Ryan Company, when they did the development on Snelling, there is no left-hand turn out of their ramp into going southbound on Snelling. So those are just some of my immediate thoughts right now, just by looking at this list. And I also like to request this presentation to be submitted for public record as well.
Thank you, Mr. Tao. And just getting it attached to our Legistar system, if you can get that to Ms. Moore, we will attach it to Legistar. Did you have further questions, Mr. Tao, or should I move on to Ms. Prince?
I'll yield at the moment.
Okay. So Mr. Tao yields to Ms. Prince.
My question is, I appreciate the appellant's willingness to add the 4D program to as a condition that they're placing on themselves. I'm wondering if there are going to be units that qualify for the 4D program as it's currently planned.
Is that a question that you'd like to ask Ms. Goodman during her presentation, or is that a zoning question?
Well, I guess it would be probably a question for, I didn't know if, where this is still before us, if anybody could answer that question, but I can wait for Ms. Goodman.
Would that be okay? I think that Mr. Tao was.
Fine. And okay. Then I have one other question, which is, I'm a little confused about the saying that the completion of the street grid was out of the developer's control, because I thought at least at one point that the developer was seeking a Met Council grant to be able to work to put in the continuation of the street grid on Fuller. Is that not accurate? Does anybody know? Maybe that's a question for PED as well.
I'd say thank
Ashley,
you.
would you like to answer that, or would you prefer I take that?
Thank you, council members. I would prefer you take that, Tia, because I believe some of those earlier conversations happened before I took the position.
Yes, Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Prince, this is Tia Anderson. I believe that Met Council grant, though it was applied for, was never fully executed upon. There have been various iterations of designs for this development, and earlier versions did include the potential for Fuller ped bike right-of-way. That did not come to fruition. And I think part of the appeal is that though this particular site may have site control, Fuller Avenue actually does not extend from Lexington Parkway to, I believe, all the way to the Allianz field. So it's a number of blocks without that street grid extension.
Okay, so that application was it withdrawn, or do you recall?
Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Prince, I was not involved with that personally. It was I believe an application that would have gone through probably the planning department. And I believe there were a variety of reasons why that did not go through between the developer and the city accepting it.
Okay. Well, I guess that I can ask PED about that. Because if the developer withdrew the application, then it doesn't seem like it would have been beyond the outside of the developer's control. But I can save that question.
All right, Mr. Pereira, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to the Livable Communities Development Account grant application for site infrastructure. There was a previous award made. The grant was awarded. The developer, and this was actually for a sort of a previous concept for the site, a development for the site. It was awarded, and the developer requested the city withdraw it at that point. So that's the additional detail I would add.
Okay. So it was within the developer's control then to not go forward with that, as opposed to what was said earlier that the continuation of the street grid was beyond the developer's control. If they got the grant and didn't, and then turned it back, then that was a decision that the developer made. So I just want to clarify that because that's an important part of the Lexington Station plan.
I would, if I'm allowed to comment, I don't know all of the details of that grant, whether it would cover the cost of acquiring right-of-way and building it. I just know that some of the infrastructure improvements related to this site. And I'm not entirely sure how much of the cost would have been covered with that grant.
Thank you.
That is certain. I mean, I think that certainly, if Ms. Prince is going to make that point, we should probably be sure whether or not it's a partial grant or a full grant, and just to make that distinction more clear for all of us. So I'm, and one of the, I understand. I think one of the challenges we're going to face today is just that we're looking at a site plan approval, and we are also talking about context around it. And so just trying to make sure that we have are able to create a distinction between what is in front of us and the information that we're gathering that is adds context to the conversation. Because at the end of the day, we're really voting on this site plan, which is not typically is not something that we vote on, but I'm going to try to help us navigate the two, keeping us in those two separate lanes, recognizing that in some ways they can be intertwined. So, all right, are there any other questions for Ms. Scarda or Ms. Anderson on this item? Okay, and I see on the slide that's still up that we are required to make a final decision under 1599 by April 17th. And that is, if we choose not to decide, we still have made a choice. So let's keep that in mind as well. All right, so Mr. Tao, did you have other questions before we go on to the second part of this presentation? All right. All right, Ms. Goodman, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Council President Brimlow. And I will share my screen in just a moment. I will go ahead and respond to the question about the 4D. The developer has not applied yet for that program, so we do not have the rents. We don't have the information we would need to answer that question. I will say that they would need financing that comes with deed restrictions requiring affordability. So we really can't answer questions about their eligibility for that program until and unless that they actually do apply for it. Okay. All right. I will share my screen, and then I won't be able to see you. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we sure can.
All right. Thank you so much, Council President Brimlow and council members. Discussion around this item has highlighted some of the challenges we are currently facing in St. Paul. So I just want to give you a little context of some of what we've dealt with and what you've heard, and how, just to give you some thoughts about going forward. home prices are rising at all levels. We have significant housing shortage at all levels of affordability, particularly at the lowest levels of affordability. Home prices are rising at all levels, and the housing cost burden is high for much of our population. Rising costs of commercial spaces are making it difficult for small business owners, and the risk of displacement are real, with certain areas of the city being most vulnerable to these risks. I'm going to discuss a few of the programs and the efforts that we as a city and as PED are currently employing to mitigate some of these challenges, but there is much work to be done in this area. So I will highlight also some of the other tools we should study and consider implementing in order to mitigate the risk of displacement and to achieve the equity goals outlined in our newly adopted comprehensive plan. We do currently have in place a suite of tenant protections, including tenant screening guidelines, security deposit limitations, a just cause notice policy, and an advance notice policy. We do currently have an affordable housing incentive program that we discussed, which offers rental property owners a 40% tax rate reduction and limited grant assistance for units that remain affordable for consecutive 10-year period. And we do, close that. We do, within our qualified allocation plan for low-income housing tax credits, we have prioritized the production of deeply affordable units. We do have a $16 million housing trust fund, which provides loans and grants for rent assistance to families, rental rehab support, tax incentives for affordable units, down payment assistance, and community land trust investments. But what we are doing clearly so far isn't enough. We do have these challenges that remain, and we need to consider other tools to mitigate displacement risks and, again, to achieve the equity goals that are outlined in our newly adopted comprehensive plan. Inclusionary zoning is definitely one thing to consider. This would mean considering a housing policy and a related zoning text amendments, which would incentivize or even require the inclusion of affordable units in all new housing developments. Alternative compliance could be considered, such as a fee in lieu of inclusion of affordable units within the development, for which the fee would fund affordable units elsewhere in the city. A study of this potential tool would include an evaluation of whether it should be implemented citywide or in certain geographies of the city. But the inclusion of affordable units is not something that is currently required in our zoning code today. Inclusionary zoning is definitely one thing that should be considered, but there are other tools that we should consider as well. Another possible tool to consider are zoning amendments, which would allow the creation of more density and the more units of housing on a given piece of land than may currently be allowed. This might include allowing such things as smaller homes or tiny homes, accessory dwelling units on smaller lots with no requirement for owner occupancy of the primary unit, and the allowing of duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes in more residential areas than are currently allowed. In order to create more housing, we need to consider allowing more density. There are several other tools we should study and consider as well. Those might include expanding the use of community land trusts and other community ownership models, increasing access to capital and pathways to home ownership and small business property ownership. We should consider a very strategic use of tax increment financing, possibly in which we are able to utilize increment created by new developments to fund community ownership and other anti-displacement measures. We should look at programs to mitigate the impacts of any rise in property taxes that might cause a hardship for property owners in areas where property values are rising, sometimes due to new development. And finally, the other lever to housing affordability is income. We need living wage jobs, training, and workforce development in order to help bring incomes more in line with the rising cost of housing. All of that to say, we in PED would welcome this body's direction and support in studying and implementing various tools in which to increase housing production, particularly affordable housing, to mitigate the risks of displacement as development happens in our city, and to achieve the many equity goals outlined in our recently adopted comprehensive plan. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Goodman. Switching my screens back here. Mr. Tell.
Thank you, Council President. Director Goodman, thank you for that presentation. give us a great deal of context. And it looks like the common denominator I see through that presentation is that we don't have enough housing. We're just not building enough housing. That adds to the problem of not having affordable housing. And so I'm really interested in inclusionary zoning. I think this council is also interested in that. And I'm just curious, like, what is the time frame for that? What needs to happen so that can happen?
Right. So, we could begin a study on that right away. It's something that you all, I believe, have talked about before, and it just hasn't. It's been competing. There have been competing priorities. So if it's a priority, that's something we could start on right away. I would say that some of these other tools that I've mentioned, if I had my preference, we would have a consultant and we would look at various tools and not just strictly inclusionary zoning, because I think we are going to need a suite of tools. But assuming that we had staff and funding would be ideal to look into a consultant, we could begin the study right away.
Just a quick follow-up. What I'm hearing from you is that there's no capacity right now in the PUD, and so what are you asking? Like a ballpark of something that as we move forward, maybe the council and the administration can budget for, because this issue is not going to go away.
It's not going to go away. I do not have a cost estimate, but we could put something together and let you know. Capacity wise, it's one thing to move other things around but I think we would be stretched on capacity, and I do believe that this is the kind of work that we would want to have a fiscal consultant and some consultancy on as well, along with our staff.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. I see Ms. Naker and then Ms. Prince also have questions. Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. Thanks, Director Goodman, for helping put this in perspective. I know I've been getting a lot of questions from constituents about sort of the bigger implications of this development that I think you spoke to very well. And I'm also very concerned about displacement and interested in inclusionary zoning. I appreciate Councilmember Tao's questions about that. I think it is a high priority for me anyway, and I know you've talked about the need for us to prioritize those studies and let you know what we care about the most. So I appreciate the call to action to do that. I guess I have two questions for you. One is just based on your expertise in this area, if we are concerned about displacement, is the right approach to turn down projects like this one that are half affordable, maybe not as affordable as we'd like to see, but half affordable with no subsidy? Is that the approach to preventing displacement? Should we be turning down certainly then market rate projects, really any project that's not affordable at the level of folks who live in the area? And second of all, are we, absent a policy like inclusionary zoning, I'm wondering if we're even within our legal rights to deny a use that is compatible with the zoning, particularly when there's no subsidy attached. I'm just wondering how, could we take all housing projects and require their site plan reviews to go through Planning Commission and then turn them down because they're not compatible with affordability goals that we may have articulated? Can you speak a little bit to those two points?
I can speak a little bit, but I have to, I'm not in the city attorney's office, and I'm not one of the council members, but I will tell you that this is a site plan review. We don't currently have inclusionary zoning. There is not currently a number of affordable units required within development. So I think you're living within the current zoning code, which does not require affordability. It's a site plan review, so it's whether or not it meets the zoning code. And as Councilmember Tao mentioned, we do have a housing shortage that is exacerbated by a shortage of housing at all levels. So I guess I can just offer those pieces of information to see if that's helpful in your decision making.
Yeah, and I get it is helpful, and I know that one of the other things that is driving our housing shortage is the difficulty of the regulation and the process of getting these projects through bodies like ours. So I think it's it's ironic in some ways that in some ways this kind of discussion and regulation is also what makes it hard for us to develop housing at all income levels. I would love your thoughts, and maybe not now, but just this question of how to prevent displacement is really important, I think. And I don't know if that's what is the answer to displacement.
Thank you,
when it comes
Council.
to projects.
Council President Ramon, Councilmember Naker. There's not a silver bullet. Inclusionary zoning is not a silver bullet. So I think again, there are levers. There's a balance. There's got to be supply. There has to be. We need to subsidize and build as much affordable housing as we can. We need to incentivize affordable housing. We need to increase community ownership and pathways to ownership. We need to find ways to mitigate the property tax increases that sometimes come with development. So everything that I went through, all of those kinds of things that we need to look at, I would say that we need to define particularly vulnerable areas and look at every tool we can to mitigate the risks of displacement and to build community ownership, to utilize the tools that we do have. I think we could do a better job with tax increment financing strategy and use increment from new developments to fund some of these ownership and pathways to ownership. So I think it's a whole sort of anti-displacement strategy that I would love to be able to study again with a consultant, looking at inclusionary zoning and other possible tools, maybe in specific focused areas where we feel like the risk of displacement and the development pressure is highest, and address it from all of those angles.
And this is obviously getting a little bit ahead of myself just because I know that the parameters have not been fully placed on the American Rescue Act, but I do believe that many of these do point back to an increase related to COVID, and maybe there's an opportunity for consulting money to help us navigate this and just to seize that opportunity. So I'll throw that out there. I'll also say just an interesting article in the New York Times last weekend that talked about just a general shortage of housing for sale across the country. I think that the startling statistic was that there was 459,000 houses for sale across the whole country. I mean, because of COVID, people don't want folks traipsing through their homes. They're not moving into nursing homes and freeing up their small starter homes. You know, there's all these strange complexities that are layering into the demand for housing. There's just not houses on the market as well as all these other things that you've mentioned here today. So I think that it would be very easy to say COVID related and try to, again, getting ahead of myself. I don't know what the rules are going to be around those funds, but I'm going to, every time I see an opportunity, I'm going to say it because these are things that we've put on hold just due to lack of resources for a very long time. And it's really time to bite that off and move forward.
I agree.
I see Ms. Prince, Ms. Jalali, and then Mr. Tao.
Thank you, Ms. Goodman, for providing that perspective. And I would like to remind my colleagues that inclusionary zoning was in the July 2018 housing policy resolution that we passed. I mean, this is something that has been important to the council, and I think we all feel good about the fact that we passed that resolution 2.5 years ago, and much of it, we are moving through it and implementing it. So I think that we definitely need to find a way to move this up because this is going to continue to be a problem for us. But I also want to speak to what's going on here. I appreciate that we're being told that, this is site plan review, that the opportunities for us to have impact here are limited because the project is not requesting any public funding. But what we've seen happen as of today is the developer adding some more conditions to hold themselves to. But we don't know. The developer is obviously responding not to the legal setting we're in here, but definitely is responding to the fact that it has a serious community relations problem. And this goes back from the sale by Wilder of the property to a market rate developer without a lot of thought about the impact on the surrounding neighborhoods. I would have hoped that Wilder would have been a better neighbor to the 3 district councils that were not involved in the process. You know, that was apparently the Union Park District Council, which arguably the project has the least impact on the Union Park District as opposed to Frogtown, Summit U, and Hamlin Midway. So this developer made decisions that have resulted in a tremendous amount of community controversy and a very legitimate concern about displacement. So one thing that, you know, when we see the developer coming forward and saying, yeah, and we'll even apply for 4D, when we have no idea, you know, they've also said that they're going to do 60% affordable units. They're not seeking city funding, so we don't know what that is going to look like. So I think that they're buying some goodwill in the community by saying, we're going to be at 60% for a lot of this building. And then we're going to have these 4-bedroom units that are $800 a room or whatever. I would like to see if the developer is really going to make good on affordability claims. I would like to see some sort of assurance that is going to happen, because short of that, you know, anything that may not be anything we can get at through the site plan, but they are definitely cashing in on it through this political process and through the community relations process and the public relations problem that they are having right now. So I don't know how we get more assurance about the affordability, but I, for one, believe that over the next couple of weeks, we should see the developer come together with the community and make some real commitments about what they're talking about. We can't require it, but I really feel strongly that this is playing out in the court of public opinion, and that the neighbors have done a good job of galvanizing public attention on what's going on here. And so I am, by way of my comments today, I'd like to encourage the developer to have a real honest talk about the affordability that they're willing to provide in this project.
Thanks, Ms. Prince. Ms. Jalali.
Thank you. I've been waiting to talk, and now I'm having the classic 6 reactions, 6 more questions, and why did I raise my hand? There's so much, and I'm really struck by the amount of complexity that this appeal review is going to require. So I am grateful that we're doing an initial dive into the context, the legal facts, and the surrounding landscape. I want to go back to the presentation that Director Goodman brought, because I want to connect it to the presentation that we got from our Housing Director Shookman just the other week about where the spread is in terms of new housing production. And I think we see by the numbers that the market alone is not producing housing that is affordable enough to the neediest residents in our community. The market alone is producing, at least in St. Paul, the stats I saw, if I'm not mistaken, on the slide are a significant majority of new construction is market rate. The next most common tier of new construction is at the 60% AMI, which is what this project is also proposed as being for about half of it right now as the latest proposal, which is still hundreds of dollars a month in rent, higher than what our poorest residents can actually afford, because the AMI definition is the whole metro area. It's not city median income, and city median income, as we know, is lower. And I think we know all these things around the table, but, you know, as this process plays out in public and we kind of talk about AMI, I think this is where you reinforce points like that need to get said, because affordability in the current modern mainstream market definitions isn't defined well enough for our neediest residents. And so thinking about that gap that we saw in that chart where we just don't have enough new housing at 30% AMI, and where prior to the appeal, I heard and saw the most community concern about that affordability level and trying to get to family housing that has enough space within different size units, enough affordability level at the rent rate. I mean, the thing I saw in your presentation, Director Goodman, is that the missing piece is, in a lot of ways, resource. We have an affordable housing trust fund. We do have a set of approved guidelines that we've approved for that at the HRA of how we spend that money. We do direct it toward programs that serve some of the most low wealth and neediest working families. But it is not, to my understanding, it is nowhere near enough to suddenly be a source where we can improve individual projects. And that's a resource gap. That's not a values gap. And I think we need to address that and think about that. Additionally, we're getting millions of dollars from the federal government soon and learning about what opportunity for usage of desperate needs in the community during COVID we have weathered. And I'm personally very interested in whether and how federal funds that we're receiving that are on the way through the American Rescue Act or future federal action are going to finally change the equations for us, because I think that we need to invest in social and deeply affordable housing at a rate that we just aren't right now. And lastly, I think there's a piece here around pushing and illuminating and exposing like what developers can actually do for affordability on their own without subsidy, and not just kind of shoveling the subsidy all into developers, but not thinking about where else we could spend it. So as we think about those connections and that sort of state of play, where do you see opportunity to fix the resource gap? How would we actually start to address that? And where do we need to hold other levels of government besides just us accountable? I know the city money that's being put on the table for these things. We all work on these policies. Council members have pointed out all the work that precedes me well beyond being here as a new-ish council member. So that's the question I have, and what's burning a hole in my head is, you know, slowly but surely other levels of government are finally starting to pay for housing, but we're too little too late. We need to significantly change this. I don't think we can without county and federal help. And as it relates to this project and ones that are soon, where the community is really desperate for new development that they can see themselves in and actually be able to afford. What is your outlook for that? What can we do? Sorry, that was such a long speech in the form of a question, but I do have a question. I think that it's just worth reinforcing over and over.
Yeah. Thank you, Council President Brimmer and Councilmember Ginelli. You're absolutely right. It's a huge resource gap. One of the questions that was asked to Ms. Schuckman was, you know, how long will it take to fill that gap? And she said, like, you're forever, you know, like at this rate, like the rest of time, you know, we have to have more resources. We will continue to, and maybe do, I've been here just 8 months now, so I'm not sure how much we've lobbied for state or federal resources, or if there's more we can do, or now given the, you know, recovery funding, if there's something more. I do know that we at a leadership level within the city are focusing, are spending some time focusing on federal funding that we haven't gone for before, but it's just a huge resource gap, and I would say that we're certainly not the only city that is having this challenge. Every city has a different equation of how they end up, you know, be it jobs or cost of living or you know, the number of renters or versus home ownership. There's a different formula in each city that results in the gap of housing affordability. So it's just something, again, that we need to really look at, maybe as, you know, definitely as part of this study, we will look at if we can do a study on anti-displacement measures in general, that would really look at the gap and tools, and funding would be one of those. And again, as I mentioned, income is a lever to housing affordability as well. So all of these things that you're mentioning are just things that really need a really hard look here.
Well, I appreciate that. And I am in full support of exploring policies that have been named here that we've been calling for. I think there's policy reform that makes our paradigms for development better. And then there's just resource gaps that the best policy in the world can't overcome. And I know that there's agreement around this table. We need to tackle it full force on all fronts. I have a lot more questions about this proposal, but I'm just going to save them because we have a lot to get through. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Jalali. Mr. Tao.
Thank you, Council President. Director Goodman, you know, I think one of the things that we hear a lot is the comp plan. And so can you clarify what's the difference between a comp plan and a zoning code, right? And so that it seems like my understanding of zoning code is pretty clear. You either meet the zoning code or you don't, and we can deny it based on the zoning code. But can we deny based on the comp plan? So,
thank you, Council President Brimmer and Councilmember Tao. Again, I don't want to speak for the City Attorney's Office, but I will tell you that the comp plan, which is recently adopted and does have much language after deep community engagement about equity, as it should. And it was just adopted, and so we need tools to implement and to achieve those goals. A comprehensive plan is a visionary document. It's an aspirational document. It's not a regulatory document. And so I would say that's the difference.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any more questions on that? We've really covered a lot of ground here today. I always think that, of course, as you know, at the end of our meetings, so much important work happening here, this time in the context of the site plan. So if there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion from Mr. Tao.
Thank you, Councilman. What I'm going to do, we got a lot of information, as you said, with the new context. And what I like to do is I want to lay this over. I want to have a conversation with Public Works and just go through some of those conditions that we've listed here. But I am going to also close the public hearing, but accept any letters of comment until the next hearing to give people time to share their thoughts and concern.
Okay, so just to make sure I'm understanding, we would move to close the public hearing. And of course, if folks have comments or would like to continue to weigh in on this matter, that they can submit them online or transcribed over the phone, and they would be attached to the public record. And you would like to lay over the matter to?
I believe April 7th. Right?
April 7th.
Yeah.
That sounds right. All right, any discussion on that motion? Ms. Jalali.
Just a friendly clarification. So I guess my question is, if we close the public hearing, but then people can still email the public record, does that mean that we can't? I guess I'm worried about ex parte communication because it's now an appeal. And so how can we fairly receive public input, and what would be the procedure to do that so that we're not violating? We're going to get lots of emails and letters, and I just want to interact with it appropriately so that I can vote.
Yeah, it's still ex parte, and I think this is kind of complicated because we're not in the chambers and having a public hearing. So we often close the public hearing, the formal portion of the public hearing, but continue to take public input through our regular system. Okay. So if people like to contact us by letter or by email or by voicemail, they can continue to do that until we vote on the item. I'm assuming that we will vote on April 7th, just because of the 1599 rule, if for no other reason. So does that answer your question, Ms. Jalali?
So yeah, so the public hearing would be closed because that's the quote unquote like testimony period. However, people can still submit comments for the public record, which we are allowed to review and incorporate up until the vote date. Sorry, having a hard time making words.
Yep. That is what we actually we clarified this morning, but that is what our custom and practice is, even when we're meeting in council chambers. We're just closing the stand in front of the microphone public hearing portion of this, but we do continue to take input until the final vote.
Thank you. I think COVID is also just melting my brain, and we're getting requests to meet with people and things like that. And it's hard sometimes to know where the line is when you're just actually at your computer for all of it. So thank you for clarifying again, even though it's been clarified. Thanks.
No. I think it's always good to know what we're voting on, right? So thanks for asking the question. I appreciate it. And I think we all do. So especially because this has been quite, quite a broad conversation today. So Mr. Tao is moving to close the public hearing and lay the matter over till April 7th. Any further discussion or questions on that motion? All right, seeing none, roll call.
Prince?
Aye.
Tao?
Aye.
Tolbert?
Yes.
Yang?
Aye.
Jalali?
Aye.
Naker?
Aye.
Council President Brenmon?
Aye.
7 in favor, none opposed. The public hearing is closed and the file is laid over to April 7th. The Legislative Hearing Officer recommends adoption of the following resolutions as no objections to these recommendations were received. Item 34, RLHTA 20-324, 1112 Albemarle Street. Item 35, RLHTA 20-460, 1319 Bayard Avenue. Item 36, RLHTA 20-318, 1128 Beach Street. Item 37, RLHTA 20-287, 250 Birmingham Street. Item 38, RLHTA 21-78, 1696 Boland Avenue. Item 39, RLHTA 20-315, 919 Clear Avenue. Item 41, RLHTA 20-334, 1450 Dale Street North. Item 42, RLHTA 21-48, 1692 Edmond Avenue. Item 43, RLHTA 21-124, 889 Euclid Street. Item 44, RLH SAO 21-14, 741 Flandreau Street. Item 45, RLHTA 21-53, 852 Fremont Avenue. Item 46, RLH BBR 21-13, 62 Hatch Avenue. Item 49, RLH SAO 21-16, 916 Eigelhart Avenue. Item 50, RLH TA 21-9, 1836 Eigelhart Avenue. Item 51, RLH TA 20-320, 969 Juneau Avenue. Item 52, RLH TA 20-317, 661 Kent Street. Item 53, RLH TA 20-329, 160 Larpenteur Avenue West. Item 54, RLH TA 20-457, 953 Lawson Avenue East. Item 55, RLH TA 21-52, 52 Magnolia Avenue West. Item 56, RLH TA 21-51, 1516 Margaret Street. Item 58, RLH TA 21-104, 1708 Minnehaha Avenue East. Item 59, RLH SAO 21-13, 2359 Pearl Street. Item 60, RLH TA 21-66, 520 Robert Street North. Item 61, RLH TA 21-16, 2093 Roblin Avenue. Item 62, RLH TA 21-10, 2134 St. Anthony Avenue. Item 63, RLH AR 21-21, removal of dangerous trees. Item 64, RLH TA 21-107, 1670, the previous one had an address of 1711 St. Clair Avenue. Item 64, RLH TA 21-107, 1670 7th Street East. Item 65, RLH TA 21-136, 277 Sherburne Avenue. Item 66, RLH TA 21-24, 749 Sims Avenue. Item 67, RLH TA 21-8, 397 Thomas Avenue. Item 68, RLH TA 21-161, 1831 University Avenue West. Item 71, RLH RR 20-57, 985 Woodbridge Street. Item 75, RLH AR 21-15, collection of delinquent garbage bills. Item 76, RLH AR 21-16, also delinquent garbage bills. Item 77, RLH AR 21-17, collection of vacant building registration. Item 78, RLH AR 21-18, ratifying assessments for securing and/or emergency boarding services. And finally, item 79, RLH AR 21-19, collection of fire certificate occupancy fees. The motion is to adopt these items.
So moved by Ms. Jalali. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the resolutions are adopted. For the following items, no objections to the legislative hearing officer's amended recommendations were received, and therefore she recommends amendment and adoption. Item 33, RLH TA 20-307, 201 Acker Street. Item 47, RLH TA 20-355, 691 Hoyt Avenue East. Item 57, RLHTA 20-321, 1180 Minnehaha Avenue East. Item 69, RLHTA 20-323, 560 Van Buren Avenue. Item 60, RLHTA 20-312, 937 Woodbridge Street. Item 72, RLHTA 20-332, 1832 York Avenue. Item 73, RLHAR 20-88, Property Cleanup Services. Item 79, RLHAR 20-88, Property Cleanup Services. Item 74, RLHAR 20-89, also Property Cleanup Services. And item 80, RLHAR 21-20, Excessive Use of Inspection or Abatement Services. And the motion is to amend and adopt these items.
So moved by Mr. Tolbert. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the resolutions are adopted as amended. Got lost in my notes. For the following item, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is to continue the public hearing to July 14th. Item 40, RLHTA 21-84, 919 Clear Avenue. And again, the motion is to continue the public hearing to July 14th.
And so moved by Ms. Yang. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is continued to July 14th. And we have one last item. The following item, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is to continue the public hearing to March 24th. Item 48, RLHTA 21-16, 959 Hudson Road, and continue the public hearing to March 24th.
So moved by Ms. Prince. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is continued to March 24th.
Okay, and that brings us to the end of our agenda, I believe. Ms. Moore, I just have to say, you always do such a fantastic job. Thank you. Thank you for your role in making these meetings go smoothly. That was a lot of work. So thank you. Any news from the wards or things to share before we're adjourned today? Ms. Naker and then Ms. Prince.
Thanks, Council President. This isn't particularly from Ward 2, but I just wanted to share that I had the opportunity to interview 4 Right Track applicants this afternoon. We are so lucky to have these incredibly talented people in the city. I felt sort of intimidated by all of them, actually. They would all do so well working in City Hall or anywhere else. And I also learned during the course of the interviews that we had 1,500 young people apply for an internship this summer, and we are still looking for more employers. So if you are interested in bringing some incredible, diverse, and fresh talent onto your team this summer, please reach out because Right Track could use you, and these people are incredible.
Thank you. Ms. Prince.
Yes, I am just announcing this is in all of our wards that Spring Break's More Fun program is available to sign up for. Spring Break weekdays are April 5th through the 9th, and the program serves kids from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. for $40 a day. And the program description is really compelling. Get ready for an awesome week of fun. This program is for grades K to 5. Each day hosts its own unique themes, crafts, indoor and outdoor games, nature walks, sidewalk chalk, and other fun activities. Breakfast and snack are included. Participants will need to bring a lunch. You can register for multiple days. In Ward 7, it's going to be at Battle Creek, but just check our city website for some more fun in your area.
Thanks, Ms. Prince. Ms. Jalali.
Thanks. I'm going to take my hand down before I forget. So the Hamlin Midway Coalition is working in the process to update the neighborhood plan. So if you live in the Midway and love the Midway and want to shape the neighborhood plan, this is a living document created by and for the neighborhood, submitted to our city, the city of St. Paul. And I think it's a really important and timely neighborhood plan update given the changing nature of the Midway and also the very historic and tumultuous year that we've recently had that have accelerated all kinds of pressures already existing in the neighborhood. So we really need your input. And toward that end, HMC is inviting Midway residents to join a virtual community conversation to shape a vision for the neighborhood plan in concert with us at the city and community partners. So it's a virtual meeting tomorrow, Thursday, March 18th at 6:30 p.m. And if you go to Hamlin Midway Coalition, just look up at Hamlin Midway. You can get the Zoom link and the info to log on. And it's intended to be a big online meeting. It would probably be a packed meeting if we weren't in a pandemic. So come one, come all, the more the merrier, and hope that you can be a part of shaping this really important plan for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we go, I will just share that, and I believe I mentioned this last year, but because of the pandemic and being home, I last year picked up my binoculars and went out and kept my eye on the birds that were migrating through Como Park in migration season, and was literally stunned by what I saw out there on the lake, from baffleheads to mergansers to trumpeter swans, and was even fortunate enough to see a family of great horned owls feeding babies, and it's pretty incredible. And so I encourage people to get out and grab their binoculars and take a look at what's flying by as the weather warms up, because you'll be astounded. I, for years, just thought there's a lot of ducks out there, and did not quite realize the wildly different varieties of ducks that were just in our lakes. But the water is open on Como, so it's we're seeing a lot of action already. Lots of eagles too. And while you're there, this weekend, Dock and Paddle at the Como Lakeside Pavilion will open up for service. It'll start only on the weekends and then extended service as the weather warms up. So if you're out looking at birds and get a little cold, you can go in and get something to drink or eat and enjoy our beautiful park. Anything else before we go? All right. Thank you very much, everybody. We are adjourned.